Looking at Rockley Wood today, with its mature trees and woodland plants, it is difficult to imagine that over 300 years ago, this area was a hive of industrial activity. The area around us was rich in iron ore, and as the demand for iron grew, so did the furnaces needed for its production. This impressive stone arch structure, hidden within Rockley Wood, is one of these furnaces. Rockley is a typical example of the sort of early small-scale operation that became increasingly common during the 17th century. The first blast furnace at Rockley, which no longer survives, was built in the 1650s. However, our story begins in 1704, when the ill-fated industrialist Louis Wescombe set up a new furnace and began iron smelting on the site. Wescombe had fallen out with his former business partners and owed a large sum of money to John Spencer of Cannon Hall. To try and repay his debt, Wescombe went into business with James Hackett, the stepfather of Wescombe's new wife, Catherine Rockley, heir to the Rockley estate where the new furnace was to be built. The site was chosen for its proximity to the rich Tankersley seam of iron ore, which had been worked for hundreds of years before. Water from Warren Dyke, which still meanders through the woods today, is used to turn a large water wheel. This powered a bellows that pumped a blast of cold air into the bottom of the furnace, helping the furnace to reach the higher temperatures needed to melt the iron ore. The furnace would have operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and been tapped several times a day. Iron smelting is an inherently dirty process, and rather than the tranquil, green and pleasant location that is Rockley today, the site would have been stripped of all vegetation and covered with black ash and slag. Wescombe's fortunes did not improve, and after only 6 years' production, still deep in debt, he sold the furnace and the site to the Earl of Strafford. In 1726, after sporadic production, the Earl leased the business to William Cotton and Samuel Shaw, who had been running ironworks in Sheffield. Cotton and Shaw set about making improvements. They diverted the stream to supply a new mill pond and supplied a steady flow of water to the wheel whenever required. The other significant change that they made was to construct a charging ramp, which still survives close to the furnace today. The ramp allowed the heavy raw materials of ironstone, lime and charcoal to be barreled up straight to the furnace throat. There's no record of a working furnace after 1741. Rockley fell quiet for many years, until the end of the 18th century, when the new Earl of Strafford, Frederick Wentworth, fired up the furnace again. The Earl's motivation was probably war. France and Britain went to war in 1793, and as the conflict rolled on, iron was in ever greater demand. The furnace was converted so that it ran on coke. Coke is much more efficient than charcoal and allowed greater volumes of iron to be smelted in each melt. However, the reawakening of the furnace was short-lived, as the Earl died in 1799. This could have been the conclusion of the industrial story, but it is in reality just the end of the first chapter. The iron smelting business may have faded and gone at Rockley, but the Tankersley seam of iron ore still remained beneath the site, and 14 years after the furnace fell out of use, the other structure surviving at Rockley was built. Rockley's engine house was built to support an engine used to pump water from a deep mine, owned by John and William Darwin. The engine house was built in 1813 and housed an early type of engine based on an innovative design by Thomas Newcomb. This used atmospheric pressure to power a single cylinder attached to a huge overhead beam which operated a pump to remove the mine water. Darwin and Co. also own similar Newcomen-type engines elsewhere, as the one which survives in its original engine house at the Elsiker Heritage Centre. The Rockley engine only ran for 14 years before Darwin and Co. went bankrupt and the engine was moved to Chapeltown. In 1957, the Sheffield Trades Historical Society bought both the furnace and the engine house. The site was excavated during the 1970s and 80s, and a recent survey using modern techniques also helped to give us a much clearer idea of how the site developed. Investigations have revealed that the site did not, in fact, fall silent in 1827. In 1832, the Pilly Hills Colliery Tramway was constructed across the site. This wagonway was used to transport coal to the canal network at Worsborough Basin, but the track bed is still visible through the site. The furnace and engine house are both scheduled ancient monuments, and the stewardship of the site will continue so that future generations can witness the part sites like Rockley played in building the Britain we now live in.